the Spectator Club. Each character here was very typical of that particular profession or class or region to which he belongs. So, like if you remember Chaucer, if you remember how he described in the Canterbury Tales different professions, their clothing, what they wore, what they ate, how they spoke, what they liked, what they did. So also in these 330 essays of the Kavali papers, we see that. Just to give you an idea of how it is written, my dear students, I have some excerpts from some of the popular essays. So the first one that we are going to look at today is the Spectator Club. It is there on your screen, so we are going to read it together. And this man, Sir Roger de Coverley. The Kavali papers ends with the death of Sir Roger, a very lovable man. So shall we read this part of the essay? The first of our society is a gentleman of Worcestershire, of an ancient descent, a baronet, his name Sir Roger de Coverley. His great-grandfather was inventor of that famous country dance which is called after him. All who know that shire are very well acquainted with the parts and merits of Sir Roger. He is a gentleman that is very singular in his behavior, but his singularities proceed from his good sense and are contradictions to the manners of the world, only as he thinks the world is in the wrong. So, he is never wrong. It is the world which is wrong. You know, these are the eccentricities of the character that so beautifully are created in this essay, which is called The Spectator Club. However, this humor creates him no enemies, for he does nothing with sourness or obstinacy. And his being unconfined to modes and forms makes him but the readier and more capable to please and oblige all who know him. So there is singularity, but at the same time, he does not make enemies, because there's nothing sour, nothing obstinate about him, and therefore he makes no enemies. When he's in town, he lives in Soho Square. It is said he keeps himself a bachelor by reason he was crossed in love by a perverse, beautiful widow of the next county to him. Before this disappointment, Sir Roger was what you could call a fine gentleman. Had often supped with my Lord Rochester and Sir George Etheridge, fought a duel upon his first coming to town, and kicked Bully Dawson in a public coffee house for calling him youngster. And so it goes on. But what I want to draw your attention to is how beautifully the character comes across even in one paragraph. I would advise you, my dear students, to go back home and to read the Kavali papers. I could go on and on talking about the Spectator Club, but I want to give you some idea about the foibles that I talked about earlier. So, this is from an essay on fans. Interesting. Many of you might have seen the Japanese fan. You know, we don't use it anymore, but it was very much in fashion, even in our own country, maybe half a century ago. So the fans that women use, he talks about it. Even women would enjoy it. Women would read it and would probably see how true it is. So shall we read the essay? Just a part of the essay. The essay is called An Essay on Fans. Some of you might recollect Rape of the Lock by Alexander Pope, where the fan plays a very important role. Belinda, if you remember. If you don't, it's never too late to go back and check on The Rape of the Lock. One of the most fantastic mock epics ever written in the English language. Anyway, to come back to Addison, to come back to our periodical essay, and look at an essay on fans. Women are armed with fans as men with swords, and sometimes do more execution with them. Banter, irony, humor, all of them coming across in the first sentence, my dear students. Remember the characteristics? I hope you've been taking notes, and therefore you would know that we talked about the chief characteristics where there was humor, banter, irony. To the end, therefore, that ladies may be entire mistresses of the weapon which they bear, I have erected an academy for the training up of young women in the exercise of the fan, according to the most fashionable airs and motions that are now practiced at court. Remember, this court refers to the Queen's court. Remember, Queen Anne was ruling then. It does not refer to the court where justice, where we talk about lawyers and judges. This refers to what in Indian languages we call the darbar. The ladies who carry fans under me are drawn up twice a day in my great hall, where they are instructed in the use of their arms and exercised by the following words of command. So you can imagine, you probably, some of you with your NCC or NSS or any kind of exercises that you've been to, you probably know things like stand at ease, attention. So here, the words of command are handle your fans, unfurl your fans, discharge your fans, ground your fans, recover your fans, flutter your fans. I think if you had a fan in your hand or I had one in mine and you could see me, we could probably even practice this. The words of command. Look at the humor, the irony, the banter that comes across. By the right observation of these few plain words of command, a woman of tolerable genius who will apply herself diligently to her exercise for the space of but 1.5 year. So how much is the course? How long is the course? 6 months, half a year. So what will the woman be able to do? Shall be able to give her fan all the graces that can possibly enter into that little modish machine. How beautifully put. Remember, it's talking about those coquettes. Coquette, you know the word. Coquette. Go back, check with your dictionary what that means. So these were these girls who were using their fans. And this man, I'm sure it's Addison, of course, but who seems to have written a letter to the Spectator about the academy that he runs. Before I end this lecture, I want to quickly read what the end of this essay says. I teach young gentlemen the whole art of gallanting a fan. Note below, I have several little plain fans made for this use to avoid expense. And the spelling expense was the English spelling in those days. I talked to you about the fashions of the period. Some of you might remember how fashions change. If I'm talking to the boys, I might talk about change in hairstyles maybe. Long hair, short hair, crew cut. If I'm talking to the girl students, I might talk about long kurtas, short kurtas, sleeveless kurtas, long hair, long sleeves, whatever. What I'm trying to tell you here is change in style, change in fashion, and then we have to go to the tailor and get our clothes remade. So here we are talking about one such fashion. And what is that? The headdress. Some of you might remember how we have tried to imitate various actors and actresses in different periods. There was no movie then, but of course, there were fashions which came and went, even in the 18th century. So Addison is talking about the headdress. Beautiful irony. This paragraph is one of my favorites. There is not so variable a thing in nature as a lady's headdress. Within my own memory, I've known it to rise and fall above 30 degrees. So you have sometimes the hairstyle. About 10 years ago, it shot up to a very great height, in so much that the female part of our species were much taller than the men. The women were of such an enormous stature that we appeared as grasshoppers before them. At present, the whole sex is in a manner dwarfed and shrunk into a race of beauties that seems almost another species. I remember several ladies who were once very near 7 foot high, that at present want some inches of 5. How they came to be thus curtailed, I cannot learn. And the essay goes on. You understand, my dear students, in another essay where he talks about women's dresses, he says that sometimes they had so much of buckram, so much of the dress was so puffed up that doorways have to be broken. So see how Addison and Steele, through the periodicals, attempted to correct the foibles of their age. How did they do it? They did it with light bantering. Have you got some idea in the course of this lecture about what the periodical essay is all about? I hope this essay will make you laugh, maybe sometimes smile, and maybe sometimes share the ideas, because great literature never dies. The periodical essay lasted only during that period that we call the neoclassical age. But what they wrote about is of significance even today. In the course of this essay, we see how people of those days dressed, lived, thought. So the periodicals and the periodical essay remains significant as a mirror, holding up to a mirror of the 18th century. I hope this lecture will inspire you to go back and read at least 1, 2, or maybe many more of the periodical essays. Enjoy your reading, and I hope you enjoyed this lecture as much as I enjoyed talking to you about the periodical essay. The real taste of the pudding will come only when you eat it. So also, the real quality of the periodical essay can be seen and appreciated when you go back home and read it. All the best, whether you're reading it for pleasure or whether you're reading it for an examination. Thank you very much.
SANDHAN, All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.
Vande Gujarat.